Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again for our 10-minute Bible lesson. We appreciate you tuning in. Today we're going to be looking at another book. It's going to be a little bit different. We're going to be looking at some verses from a book in the Bible that a lot of people don't read a whole lot. I'm one of them. It's called the book of Ecclesiastes. And we know that Solomon wrote the book of Proverbs and the Song of Solomon, and also he wrote this book, the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, this book is a little different, I think, than all of the other books in the Bible. And the reason why, it's written from a different perspective. That is to say, it's written from a human perspective. In fact, what's interesting about this book is that the key word to this book is vanity. Imagine that. Now, who would have guessed you could pick out a book in the Bible? By the way, there's 66 books in the Bible, 37 in the Old, I think 37, is that right? No? 39? 39 books in the Old Testament and 27 in the New Testament. I got a little confused there. But can you imagine having one of the books in the Bible that the key word for it is vanity? And when I think of the word vanity, I think of something that is just kind of pointless. So think about that, if you would, for just a minute. And so, in fact, when I think of that, like I said, I think of what's the point if it's something about vanity. So we're going to be looking at that. In fact, when you read the book, you might even, if you happen to read through it, you might go, "This is kind of depressing" when you read about it. And I know sometimes that's the way it is with me. But let me just say this. I think the whole point is life without God is vain. I think that's kind of the whole point of it, or to say that it's pointless. Well, let's go ahead and read a couple of verses in chapter 1. Let's read verses 2 and 3 and see what Solomon said. Here's how it starts out. He says, vanity of vanities. And then he says it again. Says the preacher, vanity of vanities. All is vanity. What profit has a man from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? Wow, what a way to start off in the book, say vanity of vanities. What does that mean? It's almost like you're saying this. It's almost like Solomon is saying this is a vanity of all vanities. In other words, it's the mother of all vanities. And he says, what profit is it for man of all of his labor that's under his sun? So Solomon is just kind of saying in some way, what is the point? He's saying we're born, we live, we work, and we toil, and then we die. That's what he's saying, kind of. And then when we die, all of that we work for and all that we live for, we give it to somebody else. And then it starts all over again. It's just kind of like a cycle. So I can kind of understand that. Let's go on and see what else he says in chapter 1 of verses 13 and 14. He said, "And I set my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom concerning all that is done under heaven. This burdensome task God has given to the sons of men, given to the sons of man, by which they may be exercised. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and indeed all is vanity and grasping for the wind." You see what I mean? It is almost kind of a little bit depressing when you read about it. But here's the thing. Life without Christ is a life that is vain. Now, I think that's a really good point to think about. I by God's grace, came to believe in Jesus, and He changed my life. And I was at a fairly young age, but I would just have to say that all of those years up to that time, I kind of lived a life of vanity. And, but a life that is lived for Christ, that's a life that's not in vain. So listen, we all want a life that has something that it means something, right? We all want to have a life that has a purpose to it. And we'd love to be able to somehow make an impact on the people around us and make the world like a little bit better place. And it's not really about, if you think about it, sometimes we envy people that are really, really rich, like George, not George. Well, I was trying to think of Bill Gates. That's the guy I'm thinking of. Or maybe some of these other people, or the guy who has, I can't think of his name. The guy that does that has Amazon. This guy Bezos, I think. We envy these people because they're so rich. But listen. Okay, it's okay. So you're going to live and you're going to die. You're going to leave all of that to somebody else. And that's going to be your whole point in life, that I was really, really rich. So I don't think that's what life's about. Whether we're really successful or actually whether we're not so successful. Here's what I think is important. It's about the influence we hope to leave all of those that cross our paths. I think that's what it's about. Well, let's go on and read a little bit more. And this is in chapter 2. We moved over to chapter 2, verse 22. So he says, "What has man for all his labor, and for the striving of his heart, with which he has toiled under the sun?" Now, the good news is that God does have purpose for each one of our lives. And it involves him. And it also involves others. In fact, the way we really live a fulfilled life is when we live in accordance with his will. Now, that's not an easy thing to do. First of all, it's not easy to give up our own will and kind of submit to his. But his will is the best for us. And sometimes we stumble and we kind of fall down about that. But a life that is worth living is one that's lived in accordance, at least I believe, with his will. And what that does, it makes all of the things that we do, all of our labor, the labor is not vanity anymore. It's very fulfilling. And not only that, it makes us, when we go to bed at night, when we sleep, hey, listen, we have a sweet sleep. We sleep restfully, and it's satisfying because our life is filled with meaning. Why is it? Because he makes that happen. Now, I wanted to read the last part of this book, the book of Ecclesiastes, because I love the way that this ends. Because if this part wasn't in the book, I don't know. I just wouldn't wonder why it was even in the Bible. But this is like the thing in it that is like the really, really important thing. It says, it's in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verses 13, 14. Let me read that to you. He says, "Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter." So what is the conclusion of it? Here it is. "Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment." Isn't that something we ought to think about? "Including every secret thing, whether it's good or evil." What a great way to kind of sum up the book that he spends all this time talking about how life is full of things that, are kind of worthless and pointless until we get to the very end of it. So when Jesus lives in us, he helps us to have a proper regard for God. Not only does he make us see God in the right way, but he gives us a desire in our heart that we want to try to do what he wants us to do. We want to try to keep his commandments. And not only that, he'll do this when we ask him, he'll cleanse us and forgive us. Listen, I know that this word is used way too much in our society, and that is the word transparency. It's like a red flag goes up every time I hear that. But listen, we want to be transparent before God. And that means the hidden things and the secret things, because Solomon says here, he says, "For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether it's good or evil." Now, I don't know about you, but I want to have those secret things forgiven. I don't want them to be out in the open. I want to confess them, and I want God to forgive me of those things, all of those things. So a life lived in him is a life that is not lived in vain. I don't know if you've read this book or not. I'd encourage you to read it. Don't give up on it. Don't just scratch your head and wonder what it's all about. It's just written from a different perspective, from you might say a human perspective. So listen, thank you for joining us today for a little Bible study. We hope you tune in next time.